What is medicine? Well, like what is it really? Because we live in a time where the Hippocratic Oath is a promise to do no harm. And this promise to do no harm, I put forward to you, is the very reason why modern medicine is spiritually impotent. I didn't say modern medicine doesn't work. I said modern medicine is spiritually impotent. And we're living in a time where we've decided we're going to castigate the medical industry. But the truth is really closer to what people actually want. Because what people want and what actually works are not necessarily the same thing. The oldest medicine in the world is snake oil on a stick. And it works. It didn't just work, it works. Really, the only reason why we're not walking around with snakes on sticks today is because people want medicine to be a pleasant experience. Asclepius, the staff on the left, is a single snake wrapped around a pole. This is the original symbol of medicine. And on the right is the symbol of the Caduceus. And it's actually more of a symbol of commerce. Not only that, it's a symbol of Mercury. It's a messenger. It's an asynchronous connection. There's a difference between wanting medicine and wanting commerce. And commerce is a type of medicine. In fact, if it wasn't for commerce, no one would understand that there are different medicines even out there. So it's not even fair necessarily to castigate this symbol on the right, because quite frankly, people would have no idea what options were if there wasn't some kind of commerce driving it. So I need you to dismiss the fetish fantasy we have that the medical industry is out to hurt you. They're actually not. They're genuinely trying to help. And the way that you help is you try and give someone medicine. And the way someone reacts to the medicine is going to determine the success of it or the failure of it. And sadly, this is where the majority or the mob gets to rule. That it's the mob itself, actually, that created this symbol. That it's the mob itself that will constantly insist that medicine shouldn't hurt. It's broken if it hurts, they say. I'm showing you a picture of Apollo tearing apart Pythos. He's tearing apart the serpent of the last world that was here. And this serpent is blockchain, it's omniscience, it's everything that we've ever known. All knowledge is known and contained inside the Pythos, and Apollo did us a favor by tearing it apart. I'm bringing this to you now because I want you to realize that the serpent on a stick, that even the reason why that's medicine. And if you don't know this, if you go back to the Old Testament, what you really find is a healer who's carrying a serpent around on a stick. And what you find is wizards that walk into a temple carrying a serpent on a stick and asking people, hey, does anybody here want to get bitten by this venomous snake? And that the people that say they do, they're asking for a ritual. They're asking for a kind of healing. And they're hijacking the witness of everyone else in the temple by saying, yes, I'm in so much pain. I would like a venomous snake on a stick. That the snake oil that we hear of today is just a shadow or a ripple of Apollo removing the old world. There's torque in this mythology. This is the cutting of the umbilical of Kronos. It's some of the oldest medicine in the world, which invokes tradition, and tradition invokes reverence, and reverence invokes expertise, and expertise pulls torque from your system to heal. That's why snake oil is still around, because snake oil works. So what is medicine? Medicine comes from medicus. Medicus comes from meteor. Meteor comes from med. And this is actually pretty important because the word med simply means to measure. It just means measure. What you measure is what you medicate. To medicate something is to measure. Like you to go over there and medicate those bookshelves and tell me how deep they are. And so you walk over to the bookshelf and you pull out a tape measure, and that tape measure is you opening a ritual where you send your focus and you place it on the line and you measure exactly how long something is. And the moment that you determine how long something is, what you've really done is given it witness. And if you've measured twice and cut once, you learn the power of your witness or the weakness of your witness, and you increase your precision over time. And the more precise your witness is, the more medicine it brings. This is the meaning of the phrase, the doctor will see you now. The doctor will see you. This is the essence of med, meteor, medicus, and medicine. Medicine is a call to witness. And on the screen, you're looking at different brain activations, different brain scans based on different emotions. And you'll notice that grief and sadness and rage are at the top of the spectrum, that nothing seems to light the brain up more than those things. And certainly joy's there, it's definitely doing a good job, but there's certain pieces that simply aren't even feeling it. And there's a reason for this. If joy is chemically fleeting, but pain is remembered, which of these things do you think would produce more witness in you? Witness is it's an equation that's run through a processor. Your video card is processing, and if you give it more triangles to draw, it gets hot, it gets heated, and exciting things are placed on the screen for you to see. This excitement produces witness, and that witness secretes what? It secretes medicine, which means the more pain you feel, the more medicine you invoke. These two things are the same. There's a link here. I'd like for you guys to consider it at your convenience. I've placed it into the chat. I'm going to read you a pretty dry quote. Infants display a negativity bias. That is, infants attend more to, are influenced by, and use a greater degree of negative rather than positive facets of their environment. We propose possible ontogenetic pathways for the emergence of the negativity bias, and we argue that this bias serves important evolutionary and developmental functions. That even as a baby, which means it's not culturally inserted, but even as a baby, we're tuned to rely on negativity. That it's a way that we render our environment. Let's see if that opens back up. You guys can see the, yes, can now see your application. Okay, need to practice that, but next slide. Factors of administering, if you cannot see this slide, please type in the chat, thank you. Factors of administering medication. I want you to know this because it really ties into addiction, but we'll have to get there. That the most important factors when it comes to administering medication, believe it or not, is anticipation. And I know this because I was given a birthday cake, and I was given a piece on a plate, and I took my fork and placed it in the birthday cake, and I cut a moist piece of that. And before it touched my mouth, I caught myself saying, And I've been catching myself do this more and more. It's hilarious. I laugh at myself because I imagine I don't even know what it tastes like. I have no idea how good this cake is. But I do, because one of the biggest factors when it comes to administering medication, which is what? Witnesscation, is this concept of anticipation. And of course, anticipation is just the right shoulder to expectation. And that what we expect from something is what we anticipate. And that these things we're using to charge and build up a placebo. After that comes multicolored capsules with embossed logos. That, believe it or not, just the function and the fashion of medicine itself is enough to invoke medication. Of course, there's the fanciness of a box. There's the frequency where something is taken during the day. Believe it or not, whether it's served in a miniature paper white cup is a factor. Is it dispensed by an aged male? Is it dispensed by a groomed stranger wearing a lab coat? Is the stranger with the lab coat, is he carrying a clipboard? And if he's carrying a clipboard, how thick are the pieces of paper on the clipboard? Every one of these factors is used in the administration of medicine. How sterile the office is, how expensive the equipment is, how direct the eye contact is made at the order, how complex the name is of the medicine, but still being catchy and sophisticated. Even the doctor's handwriting, having this sort of archaic quality to it, factors into the administration of medicine. These are the top 10 effective placebos. At the bottom of the list, number 10 is the stalk of a plant. Number 9 is the leaf. Number 8 is the root. Number 7 is the fruit. Number 6 is a tincture. Number 5 is to topically create a putty. Putty is greater than ointment. Ointment is greater than powder. Nasal inhalation trumps them all. And digestion trumps even that. Oral is more powerful than a suppository. And even more powerful than that is a subcutaneous penetration, i.e. the injection of something below the skin. And even the transparency or the opaqueness of the syringe is a factor. Whether or not you can see the liquid going into your arm causes the effect of placebo. Pain itself is medicine. Pain regulates pain and moves it. And this is very important when you're understanding what an addict is and what addiction is. We're seeing that pain and medicine and witness are all exactly the same thing. And if you've been following my work, you already know this, that truth hurts. And if truth hurts, then that means truth is pain. And if pain is there, then so too is the medicine, because the witnessing of that is the motor of its truth. And we use pain, you and I, we use pain to regulate pain. That's what makes medicine so effective when it's painful, because we use that pain to move it. How do we do this? If you were to write down these 3 things, if you were to do these 3 things, you would control your entire environment if you could learn to perfect that. You're looking at the 3 steps to how to sympathize. And when I say sympathize, I mean that clinically. To sympathetic magic, to sympathize someone else, to sympathize yourself, there are 3 steps. Number 1, you agree. The only way you're going to sympathize with someone is to agree. How do you agree with someone? You must find their pace. You must find their pulse. You must find their breath. You must find their face and place all of these things on yourself and become that thing and agree completely. The first step to sympathize is to agree. And by agreeing, you are setting yourself as their brethren. You are saying, I am here with you in this place. And after you've established trust that you agree, only then can you do what is least expected to sympathize pain. You are going to invigorate it. You are going to make it worse. You are going to show your patient that you feel their pain even more than they do. This sounds tricky, it sounds deceptive, but this is simply how it works. And you'll see these techniques as we go on, that this invigoration is how you set pace. you become the leader of the pain. And the person who brought you there is now following you because they trust that you understand them more than anyone else, because you have a more invigorated version of their pain. The third step in here is to guide, to steer, to veer, and to change. After you've set the lead, you are able to regulate the patient and turn their pain into any direction that you feel comfortable that they would follow you in. A runaway horse is not stopped with a brute force, right? You would match the horse's gallop to agree. You would invigorate to invoke a follow. And finally, you would guide it and steer it to where you wanted it to go. You know this, but you may not consciously practice it in your daily life. This is all of medicine, are in these 3 steps. The doctor agrees. Not only does he agree, he tells you you're sicker than you thought you were. He agrees and invigorates, and then he guides you to a place where you can heal. Pain doesn't actually have to hurt. And I know that sounds silly, but it's true. That the pain that you feel is part of a matrix of your perspective on what's happening to you. And that you know this when you go to the gym. You know this when you're working in the yard. You know this when you're completing a project, when you're installing new floors, when you're all the things that you do. That the biggest factor that determines how much something hurts is directly related to whether or not you feel that you deserve what is happening to your body. And to deserve something is to own something, right? And so if you're working out in a gym, you own and deserve the pain that you have. You were entitled to it. And because you were entitled to it, it feels good. And it's the same pain that you would feel if you were fighting for your life. That the same muscles are being stressed in the same way, that the exact same systems inside your body would have no difference, no way of knowing what's happening outside of their system. And that all of this is your psychology. Your psychology to be entitled to the pain that you have. To be entitled to pain is to be entitled to witness, which is to be entitled to medicine to fix. So what is addiction? The regular world, the regular world defines addiction as a neuropsychological disorder defining pervasive and intense urge to engage in maladaptive behaviors, providing immediate sensory rewards despite their harmful consequences. And they're repeating themselves because they're calling it maladaptive. And I think that if you were to unwrap this definition, you would see the fraud of the world, that you would understand that when you look up maladaptive, you find that the concept of maladaptation, as initially discussed, is based on a flawed view of evolutionary theory, which says that we would only do things in the positive to improve. In other words, it is usually impossible to gain an advantageous adaptation without incurring maladaptation. Maladaptation is progress. Maladaptation is growth. And we don't say that in this world. We don't talk about it that way. Addiction is a weakness we feel because we lack something that belongs to us. Addiction is the struggle to realize we are worthy of its fulfillment. These things, we don't look at addiction in this way. We don't understand it as an electrical ownership, but it is. You feel you own something, and either you don't deserve it, you don't have enough energy to afford it, you've lost access to it, or you've denied yourself even the desire to feel it's okay to want it. What's really happening is the addict has found connection. The addict has found connection in a substance, and society is telling him that he must cure himself of that connection. The addict is neglected, not broken. And these are very different words. These are very different things. Section 3, can't fix it. You'll never fix something if it isn't broken. And your addiction is not broken. There's no way that you could have a medicine that doesn't insist you're broken first. And that's why there's not a mainstream form of medicine that deals with addiction that's effective, because it's commerce. Look at this. What percentage of people are successful in AA? And it's argued it could be as low as 5%. Some argue 8%, some argue 12%. That's very, very low. 59% of the people that even come into AA are simply moving into a system from another system. A different program in the same kind of clothes, or the same kind of program in different clothes, I should say, offering the same steps. And those steps are saying, we will remove and asphyxiate your addiction from you. And they have a 5% success rate. Alcoholics Anonymous, 5% success rate. Sugar pills, 33% success rate. Sugar pills are 6 times more effective than Alcoholics Anonymous. And all you hear is that AA is where to go, or NA. And what does anonymous really mean? But the lack of self. So this is a place where you would go to lose who you are. And this goes back to what I'm saying, that your addiction is a weakness we feel when we lack something that belongs to us. The feeling that you have when you are addicted belongs to you. That is who you are. And the only way you can feel who you are in this world is by using that substance, or so it seems. Look at the brain recovery with prolonged abstinence. On left, you have a healthy control brain. After 1 month of abstinence, the brain is subdued. After 14 months of abstinence, the brain is subdued. That these things don't fix. They simply deny. And that's why it doesn't work. Commerce must break before it can fix. And it's not even a lie. That if commerce is going to be effective, it first has to prove that you were broken. And second, it can prove that it can fix you. Let me rephrase that. First, it proves you're broken. Second, it proves that it can fix what it told you was broken inside you. This is the purpose of the commerce system. It's to give you something that's broken and then to fix it. What does the word diagnosis mean? I just came back from a gnosis conference. And I saw this word and I was like, wait a minute. Dia means to take apart. So to take apart what you know is to diagnose something. So the process of identifying a disease, condition, or injury from its signs and symptoms is to pull it apart, to break it. To diagnose would be to break something. Maybe you don't need to fix this. Like, maybe you don't need to. You drink experience and connection, and addiction is the measure of that thirst. That you're not addicted, you're thirsty. And your thirst is who you are. Your identity is wrapped up in the amount that it can be quenched. And you will satisfy or starve or kill or maim or build or reproduce whatever identity is necessary to survive in the environment around you. That identity will have to conform to its thirst. Your thirst is no different than a fish in a bowl that grows to fit. And if you have a bigger spirit than everyone else, everyone around you is going to call you addicted, when really you're just thirsty and they don't understand. This thirst is perfect. The problem isn't your thirst. The problem is how you've been lacking in the ability to drink. Number one, you were entitled to that hunger. It belongs to you. Number two, there is no contradiction here. It is fully sustainable that you have this hunger. It is fully sustainable that you quench it. Number three, you eat raw experience to survive, and you just don't know it. And the more you understand what your true diet requires, the more you understand how addiction has sunk its hook. Your experience is necessary for you to survive. Your lungs breathe experience. It's just these lungs are a different kind of thing that you can't see. It's your consciousness. The key to removing a fish hook is to actually push it in further. This is the same notion as setting the pace, that you agree with the fish hook. Wow, look, you're in there. I bet you could go in further, right? And you regulate and you redirect. What if what you crave is exactly who you are and you were simply surrounded by people who wanted less than you? This means the addict is a genius. The addict is the genius that drinks. The addict is the savant in the room, demanding more from nature. You're leading the way in opening everyone's aperture to drink more. You demand more because you are more, and society calls you an addict because they want you to stop. So how do we feel better? And this is a trick question. Tricky. Because there are two approaches to how the addict can feel better. I actually mean there are two completely different definitions of the term feel better. The first version of feel better is the one that we all know, and that's to find the source of discomfort and remove it from the equation. But one can feel better, meaning to improve the way they feel. And when I say improve the way they feel, I do not mean whitewash and say happy is sad. I'm saying that no. You can feel sad even more. And the addict would say, what? Because you've never tried this before. You think feeling better means not having negative emotions, but you're a savant and you're going to need the negative emotions to rise the next hill. As you drive your car up and down the hill, you know this is true. You would never be efficient. You'd waste all your gas if you maintained 53 miles an hour, regardless if you were going up or down. That feeling better is not finding flat land. Feeling better is learning to hug the road more. Feeling better is learning to enjoy the invigoration, not the suppression of what you define as better. You alone get to define what better means. And better can be a trap in number one, because better puts you into the future, saying better is a place that will come. And better in number two is a place you can have right now by adjusting your posture as you drink from the world of experience. Your lack of dilation is not caused by the lack of a drug. It is caused by the shape of your antenna. This diagram has 8 pins. And if you could imagine those 8 pins could pull away, each on their own accord, and that the more pins that were pulled slightly away, the less voltage would run through the regulator. And this buck mode allows you to have multiple voltages output from a single source. It's brilliant. It's one of the most brilliant circuits ever made. That you could have 1 volt, 2 volts, 3 volts, 4 volts, 5 volts, all the way up to 8 volts if you wanted. If all of these hammers were close enough to the antenna. You were learning to move these hammers. You were learning to set the distance just right so you can drink. And some hammers burn like a bitch, and some hammers just do not give you enough juice. And that's why you're here. You're not here to learn to stop drinking. You were here to learn to drink properly. All of this current is drinking. All of this currency is just liquid experience. Pay your hunger more witness. Most addicts are ashamed of their hunger when they should be proud of it. And that shame allows them the ability to lose the ability to drink. That the shame decreases the ability for them to absorb what's coming down. Pay your hunger more witness. Tell it you're proud of it. You should be proud of that hunger you hold. And the moment you become proud of it, you start to find ways to increase its budget because it's not something you're ashamed of anymore. And how do you increase its budget? You are going to have to scrounge for change wherever you find it. The change I'm talking about is the change you would spend on witnessing your hunger and giving it more, not less. More. This is the same issue with the narcissist. And we'll cover that later in the course, but it's the exact same addiction. Every moment is a crevice to find a fix. Every moment. You're going to be in line. You're going to be in traffic. You're going to be in the most mundane place you could imagine. And right there, hanging like fruit, is experience, saturation. And you might have a definition that says, I will be saturated when I go home. I will prop up my feet. I will smoke a bowl. I will pop a beer. I will do a line, whatever the addiction is. That the reason why that becomes necessary is because you are not drinking from the crevices that are all around you. These crevices are endless. They are an infinite supply. And what's stopping you is not your lack of seeing them. What's stopping you is your lack of feeling worthy to drink from this place. Every moment is an opportunity to quench thirst from its marrow. And that means every opportunity, every moment is an opportunity to die of thirst. And that you have learned to live thirsty. Yeah. You've learned to live friggin' thirsty. And you've learned that this is what everyone else wants you to do. And it's not working. And all you're doing is making everyone else live a, you know what? We'll talk about that later, because how you fit in, a lot of times the addict is forced into being an addict simply because it regulates the rest of the crowd. But I want us to discuss that after I get through this. This includes the pain you might be hiding underneath your addiction. A lot of people say all addiction is pain hidden underneath. And that's certainly one way of looking at it. But can you see how phrasing it this way kind of sets up the victim role? And the moment that you tell someone that their addiction is based on their victimhood, then they would feed their addiction by victimizing themselves even deeper. That you would give them the excuse to feel even worse. There's certainly ways that we hide from pain, but I think you'll find that it's not actually pain we hide from. We hide from witness. Which means what? It means we hide from the lack of pain. It's so confusing because of the world we live in right now. Did you know that an addiction is an opportunity for you to create a new equation? I became addicted to snowboarding many years ago, and I was addicted to it because it got me out of Asheville. Nothing wrong with Asheville now or then, but I needed to get out of there, and I needed an addiction to convince me I could make it. I needed an addiction to convince me I was worthy. And so I picked the place that I'm speaking to you now, on top of this mountain next to this ski resort. And I found myself driving here twice a week because I was addicted. I was addicted to the ballet of gravity as it took me down the mountain. I was addicted to being connected to the whole place. And my addiction finally wore out, and I was able to break the cord and move here. And now I don't actually snowboard anymore. It's actually not why I'm here. It's so much better, and I needed that addiction to get here. This is how clever the addict is. The addict fetishizes his own self-worth and places it in a substance to see if he can take it. That the addict says, I'm worthy of more, and I'm going to grind it up in this powder, and I'm going to snort my own worth so I can see what it feels like to drink more, to drink from the experience of life, to quench my thirst. And it feels wonderful. It feels like heaven. It feels like all of the problems have been solved because you've come home, and you have. Why have you come home? Because you found yourself. And that self was realized through the fetishizing of your own self-worth. You were worthy enough to go buy the drugs. You were worthy enough to bring them home. You were worthy enough to clear the room. You were worthy enough to set up the next several hours on the bed or on the couch or on whatever else it is. But all those are the fetishizing of being self-worthy enough to enjoy what you're doing when you're doing nothing. That's drinking. It's the easiest way to drink experience from the environment, is to do nothing. You become a part of everything, and that part requires nothing from you except for you being there in its presence. Who the fuck would not be addicted? Who in the world would not fetishize something to set this up? And all of us do this. You are never, ever going to avoid addiction in this place. You will fetishize something, claim you're addicted to it. That could be coffee in the morning. It could be your favorite brand of cheddar cheese. It could be the way you park your car. It could be the color of your shoes. That all of us are pretending that we're not addicts, but we are. And not only are we, we're beautiful genius addicts. We're so genius at it that we've convinced each other that only a few of us are addicted. And the ones that are addicted are the ones that are drinking because they have too much of an appetite that makes us uncomfortable. So they preach things like optimism. Why be optimistic about getting better in the future when you could simply feel good right now? And this might sound like a trick. Well, wait a minute, that's how the addict gets in trouble. No. This is how the addict tried to break out, and society stopped him. The addict took the optimism promise. That's usury, by the way, one of the original sins. To be optimistic about getting better in the future is a trap. It places you in a place where you refuse to drink because you've been promised something in the future if you just suffer more. Of course the addict would fail. He better fail. Do you know why? Because if the addict decided to do that, he would have to kill himself. He would have to kill the part of him that's thirsty, and it would have to die before he could satisfy the requirement of society to simply be optimistic about what's coming in the future. It's not a relapse. It's a homecoming. It's not a relapse. The future is disassociation from the self, who identified with the addicted experience. We place ourselves in time. I joke about it and call it harpoons. That people harpoon me by saying, I want you at 4 p.m. to feel bad if you are not at this location. And I agree. And I say, yes, I will feel bad if I am not at that location. And that is how we manage each other. That's how we find the time. And in this process, the genius would easily lose track of himself by trying to amalgamate all of these harpoons at once. And not once is there ever going to be an opportunity to simply exist. And if you're living in a world where you feel that your existence is not enough, you're going to have to fetishize some sort of addiction to allow you to exist with everyone's approval. And everyone approves of you as the addict, don't they? It's the only way that you can stay in your house and find your own witness is if everyone's called you an addict and everyone's left you alone. This shows you how genius the addict is. It shows you the savant working his spell to create that space that he feels no one else thinks that he deserves. The pain of addiction is there to help you cut its cord. That you choose to fetishize this addiction because you know that it will run out. You know that you'll be forced to cut its cord and find a way to do it without that crutch, without that help, without those training wheels. It's some of the most clever magic we have. Addiction is the medicine of the shaman. It's part of why I wanted to lead the course with that. Because to be addicted is to step into a journey. You're climbing up a hermetic ladder, becoming a shaman. Transcendental magic. You're fetishizing a substance to raise your self-worth. And the whole point is to wean yourself off that substance